There's a shoebox in my attic right now that I wish I never opened. Because everything I knew about my life, my marriage, my best friend, my future, was sitting right there inside it, and once I saw it, I could never unsee it. Not ever. My name is Rachel. I'm 37 years old. I lived, in a 4-bedroom house in a suburb just outside Atlanta, Georgia. Peachtree City, specifically. The kind of neighborhood where people wave to each other from their driveways on Saturday mornings, where the HOA sends polite little letters if your lawn gets too long, where every block has at least one family with a golden retriever, and a minivan with a "My Kid is an honor roll student" sticker on the back. That was us. That was our life. I had married Marcus when I was 26 years old. We'd been together since college, a slow burn kind of love, the kind that sneaks up on you. He wasn't the flashiest guy in the room. Wasn't the most charming. But he was steady. He was there. And after growing up the way I did, with a father who disappeared and a mother who held everything together by her fingernails, steady felt like the most romantic thing in the world. We had 2 daughters. Ava, who was 9 at the time this all happened, with her gap-toothed smile and her obsession with dinosaurs. And Lily, who was 6, and who insisted on wearing a tutu to school every single day for an entire year. I loved our life. I loved our chaos. I loved coming home to juice boxes on the counter and crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator. I genuinely, truly with my whole heart, loved my life. And I had my best friend, Diane. Diane and I had been friends since our freshman year of college at the University of Georgia. We'd been roommates in the dorms, shared ramen and gossip and heartbreak and laughter for 4 years, and then kept showing up for each other long after graduation. She was my maid of honor. She was in the delivery room when Ava was born, actually in the room, holding my hand while Marcus stood on the other side looking like he might faint. She was my emergency contact in my phone for 15 years. She was not just my friend. She was family. So let me tell you how a person loses everything on a random Saturday in November. I was decorating for Christmas early. I know, November feels too soon to some people, but I have always been the woman who gets her tree up the weekend after Thanksgiving, sometimes even a few days before. Marcus always teased me about it. "Rachel, we haven't even bought the turkey yet," he'd say, and I'd just wave him off because honestly, Christmas decorations in November bring me joy and I refuse to apologize for that. Ava and Lily were at Marcus's mother's house that Saturday. Marcus was at some college football thing with his coworkers. He sold software for a mid-sized tech company downtown, and his team had season tickets to the Georgia Tech games. It was just me, a cup of coffee, and the plan to haul down the Christmas bins from the attic. Our attic is accessed through a pull-down staircase in the hallway ceiling. I'd been up there dozens of times. It's the kind of attic that's half-finished, meaning there's a plywood floor on one side where we store all the seasonal stuff. The Christmas bins, the Halloween boxes, Lily's outgrown clothes I keep meaning to donate, a few pieces of furniture we'd replaced but hadn't gotten rid of yet. I climbed up, found the first 2 Christmas bins near the top of the stairs, the way I always do, and started pushing them toward the opening. And as I moved them, I knocked over a stack of shoe boxes that Marcus had piled up near the eave. Old shoes, I figured. He was always holding onto things he didn't need anymore. One of the boxes slid open when it hit the floor, and I heard something plastic why. Something that clattered. I almost ignored it. Almost. I'm not a nosy person. Or at least I didn't used to think of myself that way. But something, some little pull in my chest, some instinct I couldn't name in that moment, made me look. Inside the shoebox was a cell phone. A Samsung, older model, probably 3 or 4 years old, with a cracked screen protector, and a charger wrapped around it with a rubber band. I picked it up. I told myself it was probably just an old phone we'd replaced. We all have those. I have 2 old iPhones in a drawer in our bedroom. But I turned it over in my hands and something felt wrong. I couldn't tell you what. It just felt wrong. The charger was wrapped around it neatly. Deliberately. Like someone had put it away carefully, not just tossed it in a box. And the box itself, I looked at it again. It was a shoe box from a brand Marcus didn't wear. Women's shoes. Size 7. I wear a size 7. My heart was already moving a little faster than it should have been as I climbed back down the attic stairs with the phone in my hand, leaving the Christmas bins up there for now. I sat at the kitchen island and stared at it. It was dead. Of course it was. I plugged it into the charger that had been wrapped around it and waited. Hey, real quick before I go any further. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your state, your country in the comments. I love seeing where my viewers are. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button because I have stories that will absolutely shake you. Share this one with somebody who needs to hear it because what I'm about to tell you, you are not going to believe it. Okay, back to the story. The phone took about 4 minutes to show any sign of life. 4 minutes that felt like 4 years. I sat there with my coffee going cold, staring at the little charging symbol on the screen, and I kept telling myself, it's nothing. It's an old phone. It's nothing. It wasn't nothing. The phone powered on. And here's the thing about a burner phone. That's what this was. I understood that now with total clarity. It doesn't have all your apps and your Netflix and your photos backed up to the cloud. It's just what's on it. Whatever is on it is what someone chose to put there. Nothing accidental. Nothing stored without intention. There was no passcode on this phone. I don't know if that was careless or arrogant. Maybe both. The first thing I saw was the text messages. There was one contact saved in the phone. No name. Just a phone number. I scrolled up to the oldest message I could find. The messages went back 2.5 years. My heart was in my throat before I'd even read 3 lines. I'm not going to read you every message. I'm not going to do that to myself again. But I'll tell you this, whoever this person was, whoever this number belonged to, they had been talking to my husband in a way that no person talks to a friend. Intimate. Personal. Laughing about things that happened on weekdays. Planning things. Planning nights. Planning trips. There was a message from almost exactly 2 years ago that said, "She thinks you're at the conference. We have the whole weekend." She. That word cut right through me. She. Not your wife. Not Rachel. Just she, like I was some obstacle. Some inconvenience. Something to work around. I kept scrolling. And then I found the photos. There were maybe 40 or 50 photos saved on this phone. Most of them were selfies of Marcus with a woman. A woman I couldn't make out at first, always partially cut off or in low light or with her face turned. And then I got to one. It was a photo of the two of them together in a kitchen. Laughing. Glasses of wine on the counter. Warm lighting. Natural. My kitchen. My kitchen counter. My copper finish faucet that I'd specifically picked out when we renovated. My subway tile backsplash. My hanging rack of pots. And the two of them standing in front of it, comfortable, relaxed like it was their kitchen, like they'd been standing in it 100 times. And her face was clear in that photo. Fully, unmistakably clear. It was Diane. I cannot describe to you what happened to my body in that moment. It wasn't crying. It wasn't screaming. It was something more primal than that. Something that bypassed emotion entirely and went straight to the physical. My hands went completely numb. The phone dropped onto the island countertop, and I didn't pick it up. I just stared at it. I could hear my own breathing, too fast, too shallow. The room felt like it was tilting. Diane, who had been in my wedding. Who had given a speech that made everyone in the room cry. Who had talked about how Marcus was the man she'd always hoped I'd find. Who had danced with us at our reception. Diane, who came to every birthday party. Who brought Ava a stuffed elephant from her work trip to Thailand. Who had sat at my kitchen table, that table, 10 feet from where I was standing, and eaten my cooking and laughed at my jokes and hugged my children. Diane, who had driven me to my surgery 3 years ago. Outpatient surgery, a fibroid removal, nothing serious, but I'd needed someone to drive me home. Marcus had come to the hospital, of course. But Diane had come too. She'd sat in the waiting room. She'd held my hand when I came out of anesthesia. She'd said, "I love you, girl, you're going to be fine." I looked at the photo again. I looked at the date stamp. That photo was taken 3 years ago. Almost exactly. The weekend of my surgery. While I was in the hospital recovering, my best friend was standing in my kitchen with my husband, drinking wine and taking photos together like they owned the place. I don't know how long I sat there. The afternoon light changed. The kitchen got darker. I sat at that island in the growing dark, and I did not move. At some point, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. On my way home, you want me to grab dinner? I looked at that text for a long time, and then I typed back, sure, whatever you want. Like I was fine. Like I was sitting there planning Christmas decorations and thinking about what to make for dinner. Like my entire world hadn't just come down around my ears. When Marcus came home, I was upstairs. I had put the burner phone back in the shoebox, and I had put the shoebox in the closet of our bedroom. Not because I was hiding it, because I needed to think. I needed to breathe before I opened my mouth because I have a tendency, I know this about myself, to say things I can't take back when I'm in full emotional overload, and I wanted to be exact. I wanted to be precise. I wanted to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I said a single word. So I sat in the bath for 40 minutes with the hot water running, and I made myself go through everything I could remember. Every trip Marcus had taken that was actually a work conference. Every late night. Every time he'd been distracted or distant. Every time I'd noticed and thought he's stressed or work is getting to him, and never once, not once, let my mind go to what it should have. I had been willfully blind. Not because I was stupid, but because I had trusted him completely. That night, Marcus ate the Chinese takeout he'd brought home and watched football, and I sat across from him at the dining room table, and I watched his face, and I thought, how does a person live a double life for 3 years and look this normal? How do you sit across from your wife and eat lo mein and laugh at the TV and feel nothing? He glanced over at me at one point and said, you okay? You're quiet. Tired, I said. Christmas boxes, you know how it is. He nodded and went back to his food. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to say anything yet. I was going to find out everything first. I was going to know the full picture. And then I was going to make a plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. In those 2 weeks, I operated with a cold, precise clarity that I didn't know I was capable of. I looked through the burner phone completely. I documented every message, every photo, every date. I cross-referenced dates against our shared Google Calendar, the family one we used for the kids' schedules and our own appointments. I found the overlap. I found all the moments where Marcus had been working late, or at a conference, or getting drinks with coworkers that aligned perfectly with messages on that phone. 3 years. It had been going on for 3 years. 42 months, give or take, of my husband conducting a relationship with my best friend. I started going back through my own memories with Diane like I was reconstructing evidence. Every time she'd seemed slightly off. Every time she'd canceled plans. Every time she'd steered a conversation away from Marcus. I hadn't seen it. It hadn't registered. Why would it? She was Diane. She was the safest person in my life. I pulled Diane's Instagram, and I went back through years of posts. There was nothing obvious, she was too careful for that, but there were absences. Gaps in posting when Marcus was also away. Long stretches of nothing followed by a very normal, cheerful photo. Things you'd never notice if you weren't looking. But I was looking now. I also contacted an attorney. I drove 40 minutes out of my way to a family law firm in a different part of Atlanta that I knew neither Marcus nor Diane had any connection to. I needed to understand what I was entitled to. I needed to understand my options. Because I had 2 little girls and a mortgage and a life that was built around a marriage that apparently had been a lie for 3 of its 11 years. And I was not going to make one move without knowing exactly what my position was. The attorney, a woman named Carla with the kind of quiet steel I immediately respected, told me very calmly to gather everything. Bank statements, the phone records, the photos. She told me to do it quietly and to tell no one. I told no one. 2 weeks after I found the phone, Marcus came home on a Wednesday evening and found me sitting at the dining room table. The shoebox was on the table. His burner phone was on the table. And I had printed out, Walgreens, paid cash, 48 photographs from that phone, and they were laid out in a neat grid on the table in front of me. He stopped in the doorway. I watched his face go through about 6 emotions in 4 seconds. Sit down, I said. And he did. Oh my gosh. I know. I know. Did any part of you see this coming? Because I didn't. Not even close. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and tell me, Did you suspect Diane from the beginning? Because looking back, I think I had moments where something felt slightly off, and I chose not to look. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, because we are not done here. What happens when Marcus sits down at that table is something I am still processing to this day. Stay with me. Marcus sat down at that table, and for a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he said, "Rachel." "Don't," I said. And I meant it. "Don't explain. Don't make excuses. Don't tell me it didn't mean anything or that it was a mistake, because 3 years is not a mistake. 3 years is a choice you made every single day." He put his head in his hands. I kept my voice very level. I had practiced this. I had sat in my car outside the grocery store and practiced this, because I knew that if I cried, he would comfort me, and if he comforted me, I would falter, and I couldn't afford to falter. "How long?" I asked. "Tell me exactly how long." "Rachel." "How long?" He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, 3 years, about 3 years. "And Diane?" He went very still. "It's Diane," I said. "You don't have to confirm it. I've seen the photos. I've read the messages. I know it's Diane. I want you to say her name." And in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, he said, "Yes, Diane." Something in my chest cracked clean through when he said that. Not because I didn't already know. I'd known for 2 weeks. But there's something different about hearing it. There's something about the word leaving his mouth, Diane, that made it irrevocably real in a way the photos hadn't quite been. "The weekend of my surgery," I said. "She was in this house." He didn't answer. His silence was the answer. "She sat in that waiting room," I said. "She held my hand when I woke up. And you, the two of you, were here that same weekend in my kitchen taking photos together." He started to cry. I did not. "I don't want to hear you cry," I said. "I don't want to hear anything from you right now except the truth. Is it over?" He didn't answer right away, and that pause, that 2-second pause, told me everything. "Is it over?" I asked again. "Yes," he said. "It ended about 6 months ago. It burned itself out." "Did she end it or did you?" Another long pause. "She did. Of course. Of course Diane ended it. Because of course that was how this story worked." "Okay," I said. I stood up from the table. I had already packed a bag for him, a duffel bag, his toiletries, enough clothes for a week, sitting at the foot of the stairs. I pointed to it. "There's your bag. I want you out of this house tonight." "Rachel, where am I supposed to go?" "That," I said, "is not my problem anymore." He left. He didn't fight me on it. Maybe because he saw in my face that there was no fighting to be done. Maybe because he was ashamed. Maybe just because the situation had a gravity to it that even he could feel. After he was gone, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. The girls were still at my mother-in-law's. I had arranged that deliberately, told her I needed a couple of nights for a project, and she'd been happy to help. I sat in that dark room, and I thought about 11 years. 11 years of birthday cakes and family vacations, and stupid fights about the dishwasher, and good fights and bad fights, and loving someone through their worst days, and being loved back. And I thought about how most of it had been real. I still believed most of it had been real. But the last 3 years had a shadow over them now that I couldn't undo. The next morning, I called Diane. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey girl, I was just thinking about you." "Don't," I said. Same word I'd used with Marcus. "I know, Diane." Silence. Long silence. "Rachel." "I found his phone," I said. "I have everything, every message, every photo, including the one in my kitchen, from the weekend of my surgery." More silence. And then Diane started crying. Immediately. Loudly. Now here is where I need to tell you something about myself, because it's important. My instinct when someone cries, especially someone I love, is to comfort them. It is almost reflexive in me. I have spent my whole life being the person who holds people together. And in that moment, hearing Diane cry, there was a part of me that almost went there. Almost said it's okay. We'll figure this out. I still love you. I caught that impulse and I put it away. I don't want to hear you cry, I said. I want you to listen to me. I want you to hear every single word I am about to say to you. She went quiet. You were my family, I said. You were not just my friend. You were my family. You were in my wedding. You were in the room when my daughter was born. You sat in that hospital waiting room and held my hand when I came out of surgery, and the whole time, you were doing this. You sat at my table and ate my food and hugged my children and looked me in the face. For 3 years, and I need you to know that whatever explanation you have, whatever you think justifies this, I don't want to hear it because there is nothing, that could make this okay. Rachel. We are done, I said. Do not call me, do not text me, do not show up at my door, do not reach out to my children. We are done. And I hung up. I sat with the phone in my lap, and I let myself cry. Finally. Really, deeply, ugly cry in a way I hadn't let myself do through any of this. Because I hadn't been crying for Marcus. Or even for the marriage. I'd been crying for Diane. For the friendship I'd thought was the most solid thing in my life, outside of my children. For the version of Diane that I'd loved for 15 years, which apparently had never fully existed. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Not because I was falling apart, I wasn't, or at least I wouldn't let myself, but because everything was so relentlessly practical. There were lawyers and paperwork and difficult conversations with my mother-in-law, who was devastated and embarrassed and genuinely apologetic in a way that I believed. There were the girls, Ava and Lily, who had to be told gently, carefully, in age-appropriate language, that mommy and daddy were going to be living in different houses for a while. Watching Ava's face when we told her, she's 9, she's smart, she understood more than we gave her credit for, was one of the single most painful moments of all of this. There were friends who didn't understand at first. People who'd known Marcus for years, who initially wanted to do the thing where they hear both sides. I had no patience for that. I made my position clear, and those who couldn't respect it removed themselves from my life, which honestly was its own form of clarity. Diane reached out twice in the first week. Once by text, a long one, full of apologies and explanations I had specifically said I didn't want to hear. Once by showing up at my door. I opened the door, looked at her, and said, I told you not to do this. And I closed the door. She cried on my porch for a few minutes, and then she left. My neighbor Tanya texted me later. I saw, good for you. Tanya did not know the details, but she knew my energy, and she respected it. Here is what I want to tell you about revenge, because people always ask about revenge when I tell this story. I did not go viral on her. I did not post the photos. I did not tell their mutual friends in some dramatic group chat expose. I did not egg his car or put his clothes on the lawn. None of that. Not because I didn't want to. Believe me, there were nights where the fantasy of it was satisfying. But because my attorney was very clear with me, and also because I am a mother. And my daughters are watching me. They are always watching me, even when I think they're not. And I made a decision early on that how I handled this was going to be one of the most important things I ever modeled for them. What I did do, I let the legal process do its work. I had documentation of everything, and Marcus, to his credit, the only credit I can give him, did not fight me dirty. He was ashamed. He knew what he had done. Our divorce was finalized 11 months after I found that shoebox in the attic. What I also did, I healed. Slowly. Privately. I started therapy, real therapy, not the pop psychology kind, with a woman named Dr. Yolanda, who had the ability to ask me exactly the right hard question at exactly the right moment. I started exercising again. I started cooking food I actually wanted to eat instead of what the kids or Marcus preferred. I started reading again. I used to read 3 books a month before the girls were born, and somewhere in the years of busyness, I had stopped completely. I reclaimed those things one at a time. I started taking Ava and Lily on little adventures, day trips to Athens, weekends in Savannah, a whole week in Florida over spring break where we built sandcastles and ate fresh shrimp and fell asleep watching movies. I was present for them in a way I hadn't even realized I wasn't before, because the exhaustion of not quite knowing, of something feeling slightly off in the background of my marriage for longer than I'd admitted, had been draining me even when I didn't recognize it as such. My children are not broken. They are resilient and funny and strange in all the best ways, and they are going to be okay. Ava told me last month with the complete straightforwardness of a 9-year-old, "Mommy, I think you're happier now." And I looked at her and I thought about how to answer that, and I said, "Yes, baby, I think I am." About 8 months after everything came out, I got a letter in the mail from Diane. Not a text, an actual handwritten letter, which I suppose she thought might get through to me in a way digital messages hadn't. I will not tell you everything it said. Some of it is hers even now. But there was a line in it that has stayed with me. She wrote, "I told myself I was protecting you by keeping it a secret, and I know that's not true, and I know you know that's not true. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm just so sorry you had to carry the weight of finding out alone." I put the letter in a drawer. I haven't answered it. I don't know if I will. I'm not ready. Maybe I won't ever be ready. I've made peace with that uncertainty. What I haven't made peace with is the waste of it. The sheer, staggering waste of 3 years that my husband and my best friend chose to spend building a lie, while I kept building what I thought was a real life. That part still makes me angry sometimes, even now. And I allow myself to be angry about it. Because anger, when you use it right, is clarifying. It's not destruction, it's fuel. People ask me sometimes, do I regret the marriage? All 11 years of it? No, I don't. My daughters exist because of that marriage. Good years existed because of that marriage. Real love existed in that marriage. Even if the end of it was a betrayal, I still feel in my bones on certain quiet nights. People ask, do I miss Diane? That one is harder to answer. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the friend I believed I had. The actual Diane, the one who could do what she did, I don't know that I miss her because I don't think I ever fully knew her. And that is maybe the loneliest part of all of this. Not the end of the marriage. The end of my idea of a person. I am rebuilding. I am 37 years old and I am rebuilding from the ground up. And it is terrifying. And it is lonely and it is also, on the good days, genuinely exhilarating. My house is mine. My kitchen is mine. My Saturday mornings are mine. When I put up the Christmas tree this year, the first one since all of this, Ava and Lily helped me, and we had Christmas music playing loud, and we drank hot chocolate, and we made a mess of tinsel, and it was imperfect and loud and chaotic and full. That's what I've got. Full. Messy. Mine. And that shoebox, the one that started all of this, is gone. I threw it away 6 months ago. I had held on to it because I thought I needed it as evidence of something. But at some point I looked at it and I thought, I know what happened. I don't need a box to prove it. I need to let it take up less space. So I did. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, I want you to know that means something to me. I don't share this lightly. Not any of it. If you've been through something like this, a betrayal from someone close, a friendship that turned out to be something else entirely, the kind of hurt that makes you question everything, I just want you to know that you can rebuild. It doesn't happen all at once, but you can. One more time, drop your location in the comments. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. I genuinely read them, and I love knowing who's out there. If this story hit you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I have so many more stories to tell you, and I want you here for every single one. Thank you for trusting me with your time. I don't take it for granted. Stay standing.